In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to hire a virtual admin for your cash-based practice to handle all of your inbound and all of your outbound phone calls. And using what I call a remote receptionist, which is exactly what I use in my practice and we've used with hundreds of other practices. And so here's what you're going to learn in this video. One, how to effectively utilize a virtual admin. Two, how do you actually find top tier talent? How do you onboard this virtual admin and actually get them to be effective in your practice? It's going to be a little difficult when you're having a remote employee. And then lastly, I'm going to show you the hidden cost of you either handling all of your admin phone calls by yourself, or if you have another front desk, if you have them scrambling around, the hidden cost of that admin actually struggling to get a hold of your leads. And so this is the exact strategy that I've used to train over 100 cash practices admins and virtual admins and place them into their practice over the last few years. And so by the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do all those things and how you can recoup up to $100,000 per year in your practice by having the right front desk set up. So, uh, a little bit when I'm thinking about admins and virtual admins, I think especially in this kind of renaissance or golden age of cash practices, right? They're popping up everywhere. You guys are trying to get help with your front desk and actually handling some of these inbound phone calls. And for a lot of you, you're either in two camps. Either one, you are handling all of these phone calls for your practice because you've done it, and I've been there in those shoes as well. Or the flip side of you is maybe you have a front desk employee and you are trying to iron out some of that as well. Now, as we get this virtual admin in, the thing that was driving me nuts in my practice when it was just me, right? Like I was in the trenches with you guys as well, where literally it was me. I was taking all the phone calls. I was handling all of the day-to-day operations of my practice. And quite frankly, I just got tired, right? Like it's exhausting trying to do all the things in your practice. And so what I wanted to do was I needed to get some admin help as quick as possible. Otherwise, I was going to continue to burn myself into the ground and I was going to continue to A, struggle to follow up with leads, or what I was going to do is I was giving kind of half-hearted energy at the end of my day to handle some of these calls, right? So it's like I think I had a young kid at the time, or my first son was just born at that point. I'd been treating patients from like 8 to 4, and like a lead had texted me at like 10 a.m. and I was nonstop. And so now I'm following up with this person at 5 p.m. at the end of my day, right? And thankfully, a lot of these leads were warmer. But as I went to grow my practice and I started running ads and I started getting other people in the practice, other providers, it's like these leads started to kind of fall through the cracks, right? And so, as opposed to me bringing on this half-hearted energy, to actually growing and scaling my practice and getting my free time back, I decided I was going to hire an admin. The problem was, and a lot of you guys face this problem as well, is my office just wasn't big enough. I didn't have a big, nice front desk space where somebody could walk in. I could place somebody there, and like I needed this big like person to greet and kind of control traffic. And so that's where the first kind of virtual admin idea was born to me. Like, hey, I gotta get an admin in here, but I don't have a space for me to physically put somebody. And ultimately, we found our first admin. Somebody had kind of been a past patient, and we were able to train them and get them up to speed. And they'd already believed in what we did, and that was great for us early on because I didn't know where to find admin talent, and that's certainly something we can talk about today. But how do you actually find quality admin talent? Me, I hired this person, and ultimately it didn't work out. She kind of underperformed for us a period of time, and it's because I just half-heartedly tossed out. A net, and I was like, hey, can I just like find somebody, anybody, to actually sit down and cover the front desk for me? I just needed somebody with a warm body and a pulse, right? And a lot of you guys settle for that at the front desk. Is like, I'm just looking for a warm body and a pulse, and you need much, much more than that if you actually want to have somebody handle all of your phone calls and to actually get this stuff off your plate. And so some of you guys, you're in a position where you need to hire either another front desk or potentially your first admin hire, right? And things are starting to slip through the cracks, or maybe your other current admin is struggling to follow up with leads, or maybe you've burned through 3 or 4 admins over the last year and a half or so, and you're really just struggling to provide some stability for the front desk. And this is where a virtual admin can be super helpful to create a lot of stability for the business. And that's what it did for us. I was hesitant to hire an admin, but what happened was is when I actually made that hire, I watched our revenue continue to grow and skyrocket because I bought back my time and was now able to actually focus on the things that move the business forward, right? Same thing for you. If you've got a front desk who, maybe you've had some turnover, you're spinning your wheels constantly trying to hire another admin when maybe you need a second person, either virtual or another in-person admin, to provide some stability for the business. Now, and that's exactly what happened with us. We finally got that virtual admin who absolutely crushed it for us, and kind of got our business back to growing where it needed to be. And we still have my primary person who handles all of my inbound and outbound phone calls to this day works remote. I don't want them dealing with the fires of the office. I don't want them getting bogged down in trying to greet patients and also trying to close somebody on the phone for a $225 eval and trying to talk about packages and insurance and all that. And now it's like this really weird divide. And so I like to have my salesperson, if you will, only working remote. And so, how do you actually find and effectively utilize somebody as a virtual admin for your practice? I think so many people know about VAs at this point. You can get VAs from the Philippines or other countries. You can get them US based. Like there's 150 different options for you as you think about how do I actually utilize an admin. And you get a couple different camps here, right? You get some camps that will hire a virtual admin that almost acts as an assistant. They're doing all kinds of back end things, and you basically just dump 10,000 tasks in their lap in an attempt to, you know, just offload as much things as you want to. And I think that that can be helpful for certain things, but I think a lot of you guys overpay. Your front desk to handle some of these things when the sole job and mission of the front desk is to keep the schedule full and get patients on the books. Like there's nothing else that really matters at the front desk. You can hire a cheap administrative assistant or a cheap VA to help with those things. But what most of you guys do is you use your front desk as customer experience. You use them as back end tasks. They're putting all the fires out of the office. And want you to recognize that there's a totally separate route that you could go, and that's to hire somebody that handles only your sales, inbound and outbound phone calls for your practice. And that's exactly what we coach our clients to do. It's exactly what we do in our practice. And that's where a virtual admin can be super helpful, where I need somebody, you can hire it for a couple dollars an hour overseas to handle non-client facing things, handle your email inbox. Maybe they process some payments, maybe they build some graphics for you in Canva or whatever it is that you need. And then I need one sole person to handle all of the inbound and outbound sales. Because what happens is, and I've seen this, like we've placed admins and practices, like people with, clinical backgrounds, people with rock like directors of hospitals even, and they didn't decided they wanted to do some virtual admin stuff with us, and I've placed them into practices and I've watched them underperform simply because the practice became a dumping ground for dumping all of their tasks on this person and not delegating appropriately. And that's where our virtual admins, or what I call remote receptionists, can be really powerful if we just say, hey, this person is going to handle all lead follow-up, all inbound leads. They're going to keep the schedule full. That's what moves the needle the most, because now I've got somebody who's singularly focused. And I think, practice owners, they find themselves in this chaotic zone where they're used to the kind of chaos. They got people emailing them to schedule, texting to schedule. You're kind of a little all over the place and you're okay with that chaos. But now I put a front desk person in, or a virtual admin, and they're rendered useless because they're doing too many things. And the most effective way to get them to actually, crush things for your practice and actually watch your revenue grow: lead follow up, lead follow up, lead follow up. And so, when somebody opts in, we're able to get to them quickly within 5 minutes, right? It's like if somebody opts in, the quickest way to get to them is speed to lead. Speed to lead continues to be king when we're talking about following up with leads. And that's where a virtual admin can be critical for that, because they're not talking to anybody they're not talking to anybody in the office. They're not handling faxes that come in or whatever else that goes on in the office. Their sole job is just to follow up with leads, right? They're just literally looking at their computer screen, waiting on somebody to come in. And that can be a powerful thing, because now these leads that you called once or twice, actually show up in the clinic, right? Because we called them really quickly. Or, hey, I only called them once or twice, and this person now says, hey, I'm going to make 5 to 6 touch points over the course of the next 2 weeks because they are singularly focused. Because most oftentimes, practice owners, they want to grow, they will spend money on advertising, and then now we're just wasting that money on advertising because we're not actually effectively and consistently following up with people. And it's not because your front desk sucks or it's not because they don't want to do it, it's because they're doing too many things. And a front desk can't be effective if they're doing too many things. And that's really where I love the utilization of a virtual admin to handle only these sales calls, right? So that's the first big point I want to make is like this is how you effectively utilize these people only for lead follow up. Somebody needs to reschedule, somebody cancels, whatever the case may be. They're like a dog on a hunt here, like they're after it. Now, once we realize, hey, I actually need some virtual admin help, or I just need to get another body handling only calls. Like this would probably be the case for like a dental office, or somebody, maybe even a chiropractic clinic that runs pretty high volume. Like you're gonna just need bodies in the door, or especially outsourcing it and having somebody just handle these calls. Now they're not struggling and bottlenecked with all the things. So how do I actually find top tier virtual admin talent, and how do I onboard them into the practice? Because the mistake you don't want to make is like, well, I just like hired somebody random off the internet and like now they kind of suck. And now you're just like churning and burning through people, which can be super frustrating. And I think this is a mistake people make at the front desk oftentimes, anyways, is like you guys are like you're trying to find somebody and you just like throw an ad up and or you send an email out or make a social media post and you're like, all right, I got 5 warm bodies to apply. I think one of these is okay. They're not great, but like I'll take them. And then now you got turnover that's starting to happen. Or you bring a virtual admin on and it creates a lot of confusion because you're busy and now this person actually doesn't work in your office. So they can't, most often people teach by just showing them. And sometimes it's hard to show a virtual admin how to actually do these things. So we got to find the talent first. How do I actually find the talent? What you can do is look, you're gonna have to post a job posting online, right? That's going to be the biggest thing to do. If you're looking overseas, certainly agencies and those kind of things can be helpful for you, or you can, physically post a job posting in, Central America or wherever that you're looking for. But we have to have a route to actually source these candidates, whether it's local or whether it's overseas. If you throw a job posting up on Indeed, I mean, dude, you can get 200 people apply, right? You just get these people just kind of clicking buttons to actually apply, right? And so you have to have a way to source through these or weed people out. You can have surveys, you can have emails that they need to send. Maybe they send videos to you, whatever the case may be. You need to cut through some of the noise so that you're only actually going to interview the people that are top notch. Now, I think it also really depends on what the role is. If you just need like back end simple task, like I don't think you need to have somebody who has great people skills, or you don't have to have somebody who's super warm and bubbly, right? But when we're talking about inbound and outbound phone calls and being able to recoup revenue as it relates to lead flow, I got to have somebody who's got that warm and fighting personality and who's kind of the face of the practice, right? And so oftentimes after I've sourced through some people, I will actually do a mock practice call with people. Hey, here's a script. Let's jump on a phone call and I want to hear exactly what you sound like and how serious you're taking this role. And that can be a really helpful and effective thing as I'm sourcing through those candidates. And this can take some time, right? A lot of you guys are too dang busy to actually be doing some of this. And hopefully either you have a hiring manager or if you don't, like maybe you hire somebody. Like this is literally what we do as well, where I've already done the vetting process. I can just hand you pools of candidates that are US based and ready to take some of these phone calls. So now that we've found the talent, I actually have to be able to onboard these people, right? And there's two routes that I typically see. It's the path that ends pretty poorly, or the path that ultimately leads to your front desk being successful when we're talking about lead flow and actually getting things, lead follow up and actually getting things done. Now, the first route I typically see is the practice owner finally gets some help that they've been delaying for way too long. They've kicked the can down the road, they've waited forever, and then finally they got busy enough and they're like, oh shoot, like I need help yesterday. And so you finally get this person in, they're all eager, and it's like you put their light out very quickly, right? Because you just hammer them with tasks to do. Hey, I need you following up with these leads. Hey, I need some social media posts. Hey, I need you to manage my email inbox. Hey, I need you to handle these faxes. Hey, I need you to handle this, and this. And now I've got somebody who's got a very divided attention, right? And when we just talked about you having lead follow-up as the main thing that actually moves the practice forward, keeps your schedule full, continues to keep you growing, I've now not made that the main thing. The main thing becomes all of these little urgent fires that kind of come up. And that's kind of human nature, right? It's why when our phone buzzes, we look at it. It's why when we get the email notification or the Instagram notification, we immediately pull our phones out and look at it. The same thing happens at your front desk. All these little immediate things that start to pop up. And now, when I want them to be quickly following up with leads, I want them to be calling those Facebook leads as they come in, or somebody inquired on my website, or somebody needed to cancel. They sent a text message in to cancel. Great, let's jump on a phone call with that person immediately. Now leads are falling through the cracks the same way they were when you were doing it. And what that leads to is a lot of turnover, right? And either turnover or underperformance. One of the two options happen. So instead, what I typically recommend from an onboarding perspective is I look at this person as a sales representative, right? Their only mission until they are very, very good at it is to follow up with leads and talk to them on the phone. Because now I've got singular focus, right? I know how to quickly follow up with these leads. I know the conversation I need to be had. I know how to handle objections. I know how to, prevent the objections from even coming up in the first place. But I can't learn a sales script and a sales process when I'm dealing with 100 other tasks, right? It's just brain overload. And that's what a lot of you guys have your front desk going through, especially as you go to onboard them. And so I typically tell folks we're working with, like, hey, 3 to 4 weeks, I want them only focusing on sales because that's the lifeblood of the business. That's what you're paying us to work with you on. And I can't make somebody very good at sales if they don't spend any time or make any inputs to it. They need to be able to go back and listen to their phone calls. They need to get their calls audited. They need to go back and make sure that that person was actually showing up for a visit. They actually purchased a plan of care. Like all of that stuff takes time and knowledge and inputs. And when I'm not making those inputs because I'm doing other things, they're not going to be a very good employee. And so you think that you made a mishire when really it was just all about the onboarding process that just wasn't rock solid enough to get this person where we wanted to go. And so make it about sales. If you are hiring to get people to schedule leads, make it about sales, not about 100 other things. Then offload some of the other subtleties as they become good at it, or just look to hire somebody external. And this is where, check out some of our other trainings where, talking about paying somebody in this position, you can pay them commissions for actually converting leads. So as opposed to paying them a flat 40 hours a week just to handle phone calls, maybe you pay them some type of commissions. And I'll link that video below, but like that can be another effective way to bring on multiple people at once without, costing you a fortune per se. So now that I'm talking about how to utilize them, don't utilize them for 10,000 tasks, make it singularly focused. How do I actually find this talent? How do I actually bring them on and onboard them appropriately as opposed to burning them to the ground? Now, what do we do, with some of you practices that's either you taking most of these phone calls or you've got a multiple front desk staff and this person's kind of underperforming in that role, right? I've got an existing front desk staff member. They're pulled 1,000 different ways and they can't follow up with leads, right? And there's a pretty big hidden cost to doing this, either delaying the hire or dealing with somebody who's overwhelmed, right? And I kind of want to unpack the cost of that a little bit. And I was working with a practice recently, and this is the exact same thing was happening. They had an existing front desk staff who was covering customer service. They were covering a couple social media posts here and there. They were also taking all inbound phone calls for their practice. And what they found was they just brought another PT on, and they wanted to actually turn up their ad spend so that they could get that new provider schedule full. And so they brought this PT on, and their ad spend's a little bit more expensive now, and they're driving more leads to the practice. But what they found over the course of 3 to 4 months was that their revenue and this new provider schedule was not nearly as full as it needed to be. And so they started to wonder, right? Like, is there a challenge? Like, what's going on with this front desk? They'd met with this particular person, they talked with her, they'd role played, they'd tried all of these things. Like, hey, watch some of these videos from our coaching group. Hey, they even had a call that I think that person was attending, and they tried all of of these things, but they could not understand why the revenue wasn't growing. And they saw this decrease in their return on their ad spend. Now, some of that does happen inevitably as you spend a little bit more money, but it was a pretty significant drop. And so, we started chatting a little bit back and forth, and ultimately, to me, they had three other full-time providers. I was like, "Hey, I think you should hire an external salesperson to handle all of these leads." It's not that this person's bad at the calls. I even listened to one of the calls. Is they just are too busy handling these other things. And they had a conversation with her and asked her, and she's like, "Yeah, like I feel like I'm just running with my head cut off, right?" And this is exactly what happens in a lot of your practices, where your front desk they want to work hard for you. They trust you. They love working for you, but they're running around ragged, right? And ultimately, what happened was is they hired one of our remote receptionists, and we got somebody extrinsic to only focus on the main thing, which was sales. And we got back to winning at that point. The return on ad spend improved. The schedule started to continue to get more full. And now I had somebody and only one person taking these phone calls, not two, three, four, five people that oftentimes happens in these other practices as well. And so, there was a pretty big, like, there can be a pretty big hidden cost in here when we're thinking about what that cost might look like. Now, on the flip side, some of you guys who may not have a big team, maybe it's just you that's taking the phone calls, right? Where, maybe you're treating patients, or maybe you're doing calls with patients at the end of your work day, or you're doing it intermittently at lunch, or, they follow up on Friday afternoon at like 4:45 as you're shutting it down, and you don't get back to them until 4:45 on Monday, right? When you're shutting it down again. And that's such a long time to actually be able to get back to leads, right? And so you're going to continue to burn yourself into the ground wondering why your practice isn't growing, or you're going to continue to think that, hey, I actually can't afford to hire somebody, right? Because my practice isn't growing, I'm spending money on ads, and these it's just not working. But in all actuality, it's you getting in your own way by delaying the hire, right? And those are the kind of two big camps of folks that we like to work with as well. And I'm here to tell you, and I really want to show you like how this can potentially cost you a ton of money. So, let's say your average kind of plan of care worth is about 2,000 bucks. If you got a package for 2K, or, some type of average value, and that's pretty typical kind of across the cash industry, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. But for a particular plan of care, somebody working with you, about 2K. If I miss one lead per week that I either didn't get on the schedule, maybe I was slow in getting back to them, they didn't respond, one lead per week, that's 2,000 bucks. I mean, that's a decent amount of money, but that's not like life changing money. Like, that's not going to flip your practice upside down on its head. But if this happens every week for 4 weeks, now suddenly I'm looking at like, no mathematician, it's like 8K per month at that point, right? Obviously assuming all of those people were going to convert. But even if we were conservative and said it was, it's 6 to 8K that we're leaving on the table at this point. And for some of you solo practices, I remember when it was just me, 6 to 8K was a massive needle mover, right? It's like, that's a lot of money for me when it was just me and my practice, when my overhead was super low and I had a young kid at the house and I was just desperate to have patients in the door and actually grow my practice. And you extrapolate that over a year now, I mean, that starts to really add up, right? We're starting to approach that like 95 to $100,000 per year that we're leaving on the table, and that's just one lead per week. That's just one lead per week. That doesn't sound like a lot. When I say, "Hey, it's only one lead," you're like, "Well, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Like they're okay. They're doing a decent enough job, right? Or I'm getting to them at a decent enough time, and we're figuring it out." But $100,000 per year, even if you paid an admin and had them in a sales role, and you're not going to be paying them 50K, like that's just not the industry like recommendation. Like even if you're paying them 30K per year, which is a decent wage, depending on where you are and how many hours they're working, but 30K, I'm still positive like $70,000 at this point, right? That is a crap load of money for peace of mind and to actually be able to grow your practice again. And so for some of you guys who are dragging your feet on wanting to make another front desk hire, or you think that they've got it, or maybe you're just dragging your feet altogether on whether or not you should actually hire a front desk person, to the tune of $100,000, you need to hire another person. And that's why I really love the virtual admin or what we call remote receptionist to be able to handle all of these sales calls for your practice. Because now they're singularly focused. They can only handle the lead follow-ups. Speed to lead is there. The conversation is literally their only job. It's like the kicker in the NFL, right? Their only job is to kick the ball in the uprights, right? They're not out making passes. They're not out running plays. Like how good is a kicker when their only focus is to kick the football? And the same thing with a front desk staff member whose literal only job is to have a solid 10, 15, 20 minute phone discovery with somebody and actually convert them to coming into the clinic, right? Like that's what moves the needle the most. And so I encourage you guys to make that hire before you think you need to. And I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you as well if that's something that you want some help with. So go in, look at your numbers, see how many people are falling off the cracks in a given week, and start to extrapolate that math out. I guarantee you, you're losing more than you think you are. Go ahead, make the hire. Check out some of our other additional training videos. If you're not a part of our school community as well, I'll link that below. Everything I know about the front desk, there's over 2 hours of free content in there, and we continue to publish weekly updates in there on just providing value, helping your front desk get more, and converting more patients on the phone. So we'll talk soon.